My name is Roxanna Duran, and I worked with the City of Fresno for a few years. I mostly handled mobile vendor permits and also new business tax accounts.
Thank you for being here, Roxanna. I really appreciate you answering these questions that I think our students are going to appreciate as well. What are the requirements for a mobile food vendor to begin selling food in the City of Fresno?
Okay, so with the City of Fresno, we do require a County of Fresno Health Department permit. So you would basically want to start with them initially. So that way, depending on whatever type of food business you're going to have, they have specific regulations depending on that type of food. So if you're going to do majority of fresh fruits, like maybe a fruit stand, that would have something completely different as far as requirements go through the county. So if you're going to do more of a cooking type business, then they're going to have their own set of requirements. So you would initially want to start out with them, because when you come to the City of Fresno, we are going to require that you have been permitted with them. And if you're still in the process, we're not able to permit you until that's been completed.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. How much does it cost to begin selling food, like as a mobile vendor? Like, are there fees or permit fees, things like that?
Okay, there definitely are a lot of fees, and the prices definitely are going to vary based off the type of business that you're starting. If you're selling cones, snow cones, or if you're doing heated foods, warmed up fresh foods, those type of things are going to cause a variance in prices. You're also not going to just look at prices from the City of Fresno. You're also going to be looking at prices for insurance. You will be required to have insurance if you do plan on working in the City of Fresno. Depending on your specific location, your insurance requirements can also change. So if you're going to be permitted to just be at one specific location, you may be required to have less insurance requirements as far as going to multiple locations. Then that's when it can vary.
Oh, wow. What are some tips for someone who's thinking about buying a food truck and being a mobile vendor? What are some tips to think about before they start?
Okay, so before starting, I would definitely reach out to the City of Fresno Business Tax Division. Go down there and get some paperwork, or have them email you the information. They have a new business checklist that you can obtain from them, and it kind of gives you the different agencies that you may be subjected to be able to get permitted for different things. There's just a lot more than just going through the City of Fresno. You may have to go through the county for a few things. There may be requirements for the type of name that you're going to be using. If you're using your first and last name as your business, then you can kind of avoid some fees there. So it's good to reach out to the different regulations and municipality programs that are out there. So you may want to look into that first.
So if you're using like a fake name, like hot dog on a stick or something like that, you have to get a different kind of license than if it's Roxanna's.
Right. You would have to get a fictitious name license through the County of Fresno. So if you start with that checklist, you can kind of just read through it. There's like the alcohol bureau, but if you're not selling alcohol, of course, that's not going to apply to you. But there's also the California state tax permit that you would also have to obtain, and that's through the state of California. And that's basically going to kind of teach you how to use how to apply the taxes that you're using when you're seeing a customer. Are they going to apply? What can you use those taxes for? Because that set of money, that money that you're getting from charging people taxes, can only be applied towards certain items. So, but you can reach out to the state as well, and they actually offer free classes to kind of teach you, if you're a new business, what are the things that you're going to be looking at. So it's good to reach out to the different places on that checklist.
Wow. So because you can tax hot foods but not cold foods, things like that, right?
And then there's also like a sales tax use. So what can you use for those taxes that you've received? Even though it's kind of all one income, they still have to be separated.
Wow, interesting. If I have a food truck already, can I just park it anywhere and sell my food, or do I have to get permission to park certain places?
So you actually have to get permission, and it depends. Are you going to be parking it in the county? Are you going to be parking it in the city? And then there's also restrictions as far as within so many miles of a school district. Are you in a residential area? So those are things that you have to look up. With that, a lot of the restrictions are in the municipal codes through the City of Fresno. If you just look up business tax, and then you can find the code sections in there.
And how does someone, so I guess this answers my next question, like how someone knows where to park, they would look up the municipal codes or?
Right. And then when you're applying for your permit, you're also going to list on your application of where you plan on selling. If you're planning on going to different locations and maybe like different cities for special events, that's something else that you have to include within your permit, so that way they know what type of permit to issue you.
Wow. Are there any time restrictions for selling food, or, I mean, could you be a 24-hour-a-day food truck, or?
It's actually going to fall back on what is your location, where are you going to be selling. Depending on your location, yes, there definitely are restrictions.
Okay. If I wanted to sell food outside of like a concert or a festival, or how do I look into that? Would that be the same requirements, or?
So that kind of depends what type of mobile vendor permit you've obtained, and if those type of concerts or events are located within the city, within the county, are they listed at privately owned places, then they kind of all have their own restrictions. So it's again going to depend on where you're doing it at.
Okay, so if I wanted to sell outside of the Save Mart Center after a concert, I would have to get permission from the Save Mart Center or from the city of Fresno? Or?
Right, you would have to get permission from the Save Mart Center. They'd have to list you as an approved event, and while they're getting their permits for having the event, they'd also have to list you on their application so that the city of Fresno and the health department can confirm that you've been approved and you are currently permitted through both the city and the county as well.
Just out of curiosity, what happens if you don't get those permits? What if you just show up and start selling food do you know?
So you actually can be cited. Fresno PD can cite you. That's something that doesn't always happen often. I know with the county of Fresno, the health department, they actually do sting operations. So if they know that you've been going out and parking in this certain area, they'll do like these random stings, and they'll just kind of pop up. And then, I'm sorry, there's a bunch of kids. Okay, you want to ask me the question again?
Oh yeah, so what happens if you sell and you're not supposed to sell there? If you go outside of a concert at the Save Mart Center, but you didn't get the required permits?
Okay, so if it's a private event, then they can actually request that you leave. And that's something that can happen to you. Also, if you're just parking at a random location and maybe you don't have permission to be at that specific parking lot and it's owned by a certain hairstylist or whatever type of company, they can call you in. And if the County of Fresno Health Department finds out about it, they actually do random sting operations where they can actually show up, they can actually tow your mobile vehicle, and then you can be cited, and then you'll be subject to a whole lot of other fees as well.
Oh my gosh, interesting. What are some, well, I think you kind of already answered this, but some of the other agencies that are involved in running a mobile food vendor business? I know that you mentioned the city and the county. There's also what, the state?
Right, so you would want to look into the state of California and their tax division to find out which taxes are going to be applied to you, and then how you can use your sales use tax. You'll also want to look into, of course, the county health department to get your permits and to find out which type of vehicle you're going to be required to have. You'll also need to, if you're going to like a private company or a privately owned business, you'll want to reach out to them and ask them, is it okay? Do I have your permission to be at this parking lot? And if so, you'll have them fill out a paper from the city of Fresno stating that they're giving you their permission and giving you a signature with their contact information, so that we can also verify that, so that if later we get a complaint, hey, well, you know, we have this information from you stating that they're allowed to be there from this time to that time. You would also want to contact well, the DMV, of course, because you're going to be required to have a certain type of registration. It's not a regular like car registration. Your insurance company, you can contact the city of Fresno to find out what are the popular insurance companies that people are going through, just because they're very specific with the wording and, you know, the details of as far as requirements go. Because you can go to one insurance company and they can say, okay, let's take your down payment and it's going to be about this much. And then when you submit it to the city of Fresno to get your permit, we can kick it back and say, oh, I'm sorry, you know, you actually need this, this, and that. and then your insurance company is saying that's something that we don't provide. So that's something that you want to get before you actually go out and, you know, hand out the money for the insurance.
Oh my goodness. So, in closing, you think that the best place to start is at the City of Fresno?
Yes, I would say start with their new business checklist and kind of run through those and see if any of those apply to you, and then also contact your County of Fresno to find out what specific requirements are going to be required for your specialized type of mobile vending.
I really appreciate you coming out and answering these questions, Roxanna. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.